Welcome back to the program, everybody. We've got a fun one today because me and Marco together are going to be doing our first mock draft. We haven't done one. We've got a fun setup where we're going to be going simultaneously and we're going to be using the PFN mock draft simulator. But this one's going to be a fun one. Stay tuned because we'll be back right after this. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the program. I'm here with my co-host Marco. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I mean, we it just seems like even in the dead period, we're getting a bit of 49ers news. Obviously, today, I guess the highlight, we signed a player, didn't sign a player, got a running back, didn't get a tight end. But all of that is, just the norm of how 49ers news and the 49ers world kind of works.
I mean, 49ers world is an interesting world. 1 week you're celebrating, the entire fan base is celebrating, and that's why I did not tweet or not talk about Brock Wright because the Lions had the opportunity to match, so I didn't feel like it was worthy enough to talk about. Like I mentioned it briefly on the show, like they offered him a restricted free agent, offered him a deal, but that's what sucks when you do the dirty work for a team. And now the Detroit Lions got a tight end too that they could pair with their elite Sam Porta for the next few years. So that's going to be fun, right?
Oh yeah, I mean they're set. But this also means the Niners, they might be in search of one. And so, like I said in the intro, we're going to do something we haven't done this draft season. One thing we did a couple of times last draft season, and that is a 49ers mock draft. We'll call it mock draft 1.0 because us two haven't done one together. I know Marco did one earlier, either this week or last week. Why don't you give some just a quick highlight of how that one went and what you kind of were thinking going into that one?
So this is going to be my third. So I've done one with David Lichty. I did one with Ryan G. Hensley on his show, but that was dual streamed. So it's a variety. Like I like to say, like I like to do a public service announcement every time I do a mock draft. We are mocking the draft based off of the simulator. This is not based off of how
I
it's
guess
really gonna
what you
fall.
might expect to happen.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
right, like because like I was telling him, like when I was done with Ryan, I was telling him like, all right, this player's for 100% sure not gonna be there at pick like 100, and like the player that's probably gonna go in the top 75. Like it's kind of dumb for me to take him here just because I know this is super unrealistic. So sometimes like I might pass on a player just because I want to keep the like to keep it try to a little more realistic, right? Like it's a mock draft, so I'm trying to prepare for the draft, trying to give more insight because if a player falls from who's projected to go top 70 and he falls to 130 and where they're picking, it's super unrealistic. So like that's kind of public service announcement. One, that's how I draft. I don't know about Rohan. Rohan, you can go ahead and take him. I really don't care. That's just how I do a mock draft. Like it just makes your mock draft like even better. Like, oh shit, you got a player who should go in the second round, in the fourth round. Like that's a steal, right?
Right.
And
Right.
that's kind of I don't do that just because I know for sure. Like if it's for sure a player that is guaranteed to go earlier in the draft, I'm not taking them later in the draft in round 3 or 4.
I agree. And so you see, when it comes to that, I usually evaluate: is there a player in this range that I believe has a potential reason as to why they could fall? If not, if I can't really think of a reason why they might be at that pick, then I'm not going to. I'm going to just let it slide. I'm going to try. Sometimes you might have the inkling to trade up, maybe 15 spots because a guy dropped 40 spots or something like that. I'll usually pass on that. But yeah, I mean, this one's going to be my first one that I've done on a video. I mean, I post, funny ones and also realistic ones here and there on Twitter, but I've done a couple of them. But haven't really done one on a video, especially one where I've kind of thought the process out live. So excited to start this one out.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and get straight to it. Let me go ahead and take this banner off, throw this onto the stage. So just so you guys can see, we have two mocks going. I'll zoom in a little bit as I can, if it lets me. There it goes. So The first one's going to be Rohan's. Second one's going to be mine. For those of you who were here when I did a mock draft with David Lichty, you guys know Rohan. I'm going to give you another perfect public service announcement. I
Go
will
ahead.
probably mess up once we get to like the 6th and 7th round. So make sure you're paying attention to your mock. I will probably draft one of my players onto your mock draft because that's just how I did it last time and completely made it more confusing. So keep an eye on your mock draft. Or if you're watching and you want to be like, hey, Marco, stop being a jackass, you go ahead and let me know. Like, it's pretty much just, I mean, as you start getting closer, that's just how it goes. So, Rohan, we're going to get started first. You're going to enter into
All right, let's pause it real quick. So before we start, again, first round, the Niners are picking in the first round. This is going to be an intriguing pick. We'll see, how the board usually goes. When I approach mock drafts, I like to think of the three ways the Niners can do things. One, do you trade up for a player in the mid to late 20s, somewhere around there, that I believe would be there and that the Niners could go realistically get? Two, do you prefer to stay at 31? Or three, if the simulator offers me a trade, do I entertain that trade and potentially even move back? That's the three options, because usually when you're at the pick and they offer you a trade, it's to move back. So what I do is I stop around 25. Yeah, I mean,
this is
Joe Alt is
exactly what I'm
not
talking about.
exactly.
So,
But
like,
I usually stop around 25. I see if there's a realistic player that I want to trade up for, and that's where I'll usually start when it comes to trade up. So what I'll do here, or what Marco, I guess, will do, we'll stop at pick 25. If there's a player I believe will be there that I personally feel there is a value in trading up for, we'll do that.
all right, it's going fast. Let me know. I'm going to try to pause it on time. Okay, I'm at
All
pick
right,
23.
there
It's
we
probably
go.
the best I'm going to do. Just to let you be straight up.
So you see a couple of players here on the board. Byron Murphy, do I believe he'll be here at 24? No. Jazeer Newton, or Johnny Newton, he might be there. Powers Johnson, he could be there. Kool-Aid. But when I look at a board like this, especially when you have a couple of receiver targets and a couple of tackle targets, this is a board where I usually like to kind of let things slip. Because if I'm looking for a player to trade up, it's likely to be an offensive tackle, one that I believe might be a premier type of offensive tackle range. But as you see on this board, a significant amount of them have gone already. Tailisi Fuaga went at 19. Mims goes at 17. Latham goes at 16. Fautanu, a guy who usually is a guy who I like, he goes at 14. So really, to me, this is a board where I just let it fall to 31.
But this makes sense, though, because I have been saying I think Fautanu, and I said it even before the combine and stuff, like I think he's legitimately a top 15 lock. Like, and that was before the combine. And the combine just essentially solidified his status. So we're at 31, and what's crazy is you got three trade offers. So the first one,
All right.
as everyone can see, New England's offering pick 34 and a 2025 fourth rounder. You got Carolina giving you pick 33 and a 6th rounder in 25. And then Seattle's coming in with a bunch of picks, but you're not going to be picking until 81. You do get their 1st rounder and their 2nd rounder next year.
But I don't help the Seahawks. I will never help. Actually, this trade though is not bad at all.
It's like actually.
Wait, this is a 25 would be next draft, right? This is actually a really, really darn good trade. Because if you're getting a 1, which will be higher than 31, I can assure you, a 2, which will probably be in the 40s, and then a 3, a comp 3, and I believe that's a 6. That is a lot of value for the 31st pick in the draft.
And you could always trade back up. So, I mean, but Rohan doesn't like Seattle. No one does.
No. So
what's crazy
here,
is 2 of your guys went just before you could go, and you're probably heartbroken now.
I see Kool-Aid also there at 26. That would have been the only corner I kind of would consider at 26. So that's kind of unfortunate. But again, like we said at the beginning, PSA, we're going to go for realistic players. Do I think Powers Johnson's there at 31? I don't think so. I also don't think Adonai Mitchell will be there at 31 either. So if I'm looking at realistic prospects, this list starts with Michael Penix Jr. I think the Niners would be in range for a quarterback at 31. Michael Penix Jr. fits that mold, so he will be in serious consideration. No, I'm kidding. But
I mean,
seriously,
like, could they
No,
though? Are you going to
no.
pay? Do you pay Brock Purdy the $50 million, $60 million next
now that's
year?
a 2020. Well, you see, maybe if we're just thinking out loud, you take that Seattle offer. Seattle sucks next year. You get their 1st round pick. You flip it into a quarterback, maybe. But thinking
I
just
mean, when you
realistically
think
for
about
this
it, like if you
specific draft,
just to like throw hypotheticals out there, right? 2024, the Bills stink it up. Josh Allen's tired of it. He's like, you know what? I want out. His numbers are actually very favorable. You now have ammunition to give them Brock Purdy at 2 1s plus whatever the hell else they want, and you get Josh Allen. I'm just throwing it
maybe.
out there. I'm not. I mean, I'm just being the devil's advocate that I always am on the show. Just throwing things out there.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just think this through. There are two players that I believe are worthy here that I would personally look at. Jordan Morgan, who I believe can play tackle at the next level, could also slide in at guard in year one, and Graham Barton, who I believe would be a very, very, very solid pick at 31. I think he is probably a guard slash center. I would not mind him trying to throw him to compete at either spot in year one. I think that those two are the players I would see. Is there any other tackle that might slip on the board here? Because the other prospects I just don't believe will be there or might not be as enticing with the first round. It doesn't look like first round wise, at least, that I would take any of the other guys, but we'll think about it. Now, the two trade offers I got was one going from 31 to 34. You get a fourth rounder next year. One going 31 to 33. The one thing that I will say, I wouldn't mind taking one of these deals if I was anywhere else in the first round. Personally, though, I'm going to prefer that fifth-year option, especially when it comes to an offensive lineman, because you know that they take a little bit longer sometimes to develop. I'm going to prefer to not take the extra day 3 pick, and instead it's Jordan Morgan or Graham Barton. I think right now, with the versatility that the 49ers want and with the players that have already passed, I'm going to prefer the tackle, the guy who I believe can best translate at tackle. I don't know if I'd consider Morgan to be a better prospect than Barton, but I think that I'd prefer someone who could potentially play tackle because that position obviously provides the most value. I will take Jordan Morgan here at 31.
And Jordan Morgan here at 31 is actually a really good pick. Like when you watch Jordan Morgan, the film shows he's a first round talent. He's able to play left tackle, right tackle. His film is pretty damn good. Now, for me, at times you do see a little bit of length issue, and I'm gonna go ahead and take Jordan Morgan for you
Yeah.
now. So there's times you do see I'm gonna pause it just there, just I don't know if you want to trade back up. For me, I'm probably gonna do the same thing as you. But like when you look at Jordan Morgan, he has all the traits and everything. So here, there's not really any tackles, I don't think, going to be on the board. I'm not a big fan of Tyler Guyton Jr. Tyler Guyton.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a lot of tackles, like just like your board, kind of Troy Fatanu.
Where they go a little early.
Yeah, they're all went a little bit too early for me. I'm not trading up. I'm letting my board fall. Now I do get a trade offer. I get the Jacksonville Jaguars trading me pick 48, 96, and a second next year for pick 31 and 135. Baltimore's coming in heavy with a second and a third next year, but the package is 62 and 93. And then the final offer is the Jets giving me pretty much their whole draft class next year and pick 72.
They're giving you their draft class and their head coach because Salah's coming back.
Absolutely. So for me, it's interesting because everyone knows I'm a huge fan of Kingsley Suamataia. I think Kingsley is going to be one of the better tackles drafted this year. When I watch him, the athleticism, the traits, everything is there. Length, size, everything you could think of for an offensive tackle. But looking at it, offensive tackle is one of those ones where I could double up and try to get a guy I'm also really high on, Roger Rosengarten, at 87. Jordan Morgan just went at 30. Now, this is where I start thinking, well, do the Niners plan on moving Deebo Samuel next year? Do they plan on getting rid of Brandon Aiyuk? I don't think the Aiyuk one is legit. I truly don't. But if I'm thinking for the future, and I'm thinking the Niners are going to be moving Deebo Samuel after the year, it makes me want to lean towards receiver.
Is that coming from Clutch Gene Sports though, or Marco Schefter?
No, this is oh.
Because I saw Jesse tweet out something. The Diggs thing where Marco Schefter kind of broke some, or not broke, but he was saying something a little bit.
That I had heard back in early March that the Bills and Texans were talking, and did I text you? You've been hella busy. I think there was a time you were
I
super
don't
busy
think.
during finals.
Yeah, I don't. But you texted me some other things. That's for sure.
But I know. So for me, like I'm super in on. I think IU 100% stays. I think you go with Donnie Mitchell, Keon Cole. Like these are receivers that could possibly be there, and I think it's too hard to pass on a receiver at this point. Even though I'm extremely high on Kingsley Suamataya. Like for me, the only reason I don't take him is because I truly believe you're not going to have Deebo Samuel next year because you're essentially going to have to pay Brock Purdy. You're going to have to get rid of one of the receivers. It's going to be Deebo. They're going to have to get rid of, for example, potentially a George Kittle, extend Aaron Banks. There's a lot of people you have to keep. At some point, you got to start getting younger at receiver. And for the most part, looking at guys like McKivitz, he's not the worst thing in the world. Like, he's really not. Like, and he gets dinged. For me, one thing I can't go away from, and I know a lot
Is
of people are
Adonai
going to be
Mitchell?
like, I'm super high on Donnie Mitchell. He's receiver 3. I think he has
I
the.
agree. I just don't know if he'll be here. That's the question. But if he's there, I can definitely understand your thinking. Go ahead.
And the other day, like I tweeted out, like the only player I could see the Niners taking that is not a tackle is a Donnie Mitchell. I don't see the Niners take, even if Xavier Worthy's there, I don't see them taking Worthy. I don't see Kyle Shanahan preferring Worthy over Adonai. Now, you're looking at 6'2", 4.34, great route runner. I think he's the best route runner in this class. Super
Okay.
loose hips. Now, kind of gives me, without the yard after the catch, which that's probably his biggest knock, as a route runner, as a player, coming out of college, he reminds me a lot of CeeDee Lamb as a route runner. And nothing else. I'm not comparing nothing else, just their route running ability. I'm taking Adonai and I'm running to the podium and doing it. And I'm not gonna, like, if he's there, Kingsley's there. This is the hardest pick I have to make. And I have not had a draft where these two are both there. And I'm deciding to go Adonai because I truly believe Kyle Shanahan would prefer another receiver opposite of Brandon Aiyuk. So I'm gonna go there.
Now, before I go back to mine and we resume, I want to ask, let's say you draft Adonai Mitchell in year 1. Deebo Samuel is on your roster. You said you envision him not being there next year, but let's say for the time being, Samuel stays on your roster this year. What would you do with Adonai Mitchell, given that you have your top 3 receivers back and on the team this year? What is the role you envision for Mitchell in this scenario?
I'm using Mitchell as my receiver 3. I'm sorry, Juwan Jennings. I know we paid you the 4.9 million, but I'm using him as a receiver 3, and I might even use him as a receiver 2 at times, and use Deebo as that slot role, and have Deebo be that gadget guy. Like, I'm truly gonna use you as the receiver you are, and it's only gonna expand our offensive passing game and a passing attack even much more. He's gonna be the guy that clears things out for Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo year 1, running his 4-3-4. Hey, put that head down and go, clear out. That's how I would envision using him year 1. That allows him to be effective and a space eater on the field, so it doesn't allow his talent to go to waste in year 1, because he's probably going to go for 600 plus yards year 1, which is a win if he is your receiver technically 4 or 5, because you have George Kittle, CMC, and then you're going to have Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel ahead of him, so he's technically your 5. So if you're getting 600 plus yards out of him rookie year, that's a win.
I agree. The thing I would say is also Ayuk's a guy who we've seen play out of the slot at times as well. I think he provides provides versatility where you can move guys in and outside. The thing about Jennings too, I think you can have it be a little more situational. You didn't lock Jennings into a long-term contract, probably more for Jennings's cause, but you didn't lock him into a long-term contract this year. Could also now be a trade candidate because I do believe he'd fetch something in return. Maybe not as much, but could be a day 3 pick if you do ultimately select a guy like Adonai Mitchell.
You could definitely get a 4th rounder for Jennings, I think. 4th, 5th rounder for Jennings, which is a win.
Yeah. Let's go to my draft now. We're at 44. What I usually like to do in the second round, we try and be realistic. I don't know if the Niners jump up like 20 spots, especially if they stay put and not trade back. I usually go to around 50, and then I see from there what the board is like. If there's a player who I believe that I really like that I want to take, that's what this is where I initially look. Now, right now, if I look at the board, there is probably one guy that stands out that I believe could have first round potential. That is not Tavondre Sweat. It's actually Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. I think Frazier, I don't believe he'll end up going in the first round, but I believe that teams might have a first round grade on him. Just the position of being a center knocks him. Now, I didn't take Graham Barton. I chose to take Jordan Morgan for the reason that I believe the interior class, when the draft goes along, is better than the tackle class. I think when it gets to the third round and beyond, I'm not as high on the tackle class as I am on the interior class, where I think that's where those guys kind of shine. Now, the Niners have a couple of fourth-round picks in this class. I do believe that those are going to be valuable. I also realize the Niners, to me at least, would also look at other positions. You're talking about receiver. You're talking about corner potentially as positions you might take within the first 3 rounds. But Zach Frazier is also here. I think that that's a position you might look at. Defensive tackle is very interesting. I don't think I would take Tavondre Sweat this early. I don't. I personally wouldn't, especially with the Niners, considering where their infrastructure is right now. But I also think that you start to try and think about best player available. I think there's talent on the board. I look at Jatavion Sanders as another guy who might be considered as best player available in this case. And so here's where I question, do I prefer to go all in for a guy like Zach Frazier, who I believe could start on day one at a position where I am emphatically asking for an upgrade, which is center. I think the Niners should look to upgrade at center, or do I wait and understand that there's a good bevy of talent in this area? I think I'm going to wait 5 more spots, see who comes off the board. If Frazier is on the board at 54, 55, I'm pulling the trigger and I'm going to make a trade.
If I don't pause it at 54 or 55, don't get mad at me.
And Frazier goes, which to me indicates I am willing to wait till 63 to make my next pick.
Cool.
Okay, we got a trade offer here. I personally would not take this. I think the Niners have a lot of those picks in the hundreds. Now, this one is interesting. You go from 63 to 80. You pick up 97 as well. I think that this one certainly would be of intrigue. I want to take a look at the board first, though, and see, is there a player I would take? Michael Hall out of Ohio State stands out as a potential defensive tackle.
If I was this was my draft, I would run and take Cooper from Texas A&M immediately, and it would be a dub of a draft because you got 2 starters day one, and I don't think, even though I love Dre Greenlaw, I don't think Dre Greenlaw would get his job back that easy with Cooper on the field, and that's just me.
I also think you think about the alternative, which is Greenlaw's contract is done after this season. You're likely not going to extend him before the season given the injury, and so Greenlaw, who signed the 2-year deal, I believe his contract is done at the end of this year, correct?
I believe so. It could be another. I thought it was another year. I could be wrong.
It might be 24 and 25, the 2 extension years. But Greenlaw's a guy who, you have the injury. I do believe Greenlaw would be your number 2, but Cooper is the best linebacker in this class. At least I feel like it. Cooper, Peyton Wilson's up there too as a guy who's gotten a lot of hype, but Cooper might be the best linebacker in this class. He could be a guy you consider. Another guy who stands out to me is Jatavion Sanders. The one question, I personally believe Kittle will be here through 2025 after they restructured his contract. Are you able to field the 2 tight ends? But the Niners aren't that comfortable with their current group of tight ends. You might look at him as a guy who you might want to involve. Let's look at maybe other positions the Niners might consider. Receiver is clearly one of them. I see Xavier Legette just went. There are guys who, I think the main guy who you consider in the 3rd round is end of 2nd round might be Ricky Pearsall. But I also look at these receivers, and I think you might be able to trade up to try and get one of these guys.
Is just to throw it out there.
Go ahead.
I have heard Kyle Shanahan really does like Jalen McMillan.
And that's a guy who I might pinpoint. You go to 75, you go to maybe 80. That might be a guy who you trade up for because you have a multitude of 3rd-round picks. I'm going to take, though, an interesting swing in this one just because I think the player could be worth it, and I think the Niners could have interest. I think I'm going to actually go, maybe not with the biggest need, but I think I'm going to take Jatavion Sanders. I think you're trying to expand your amount of weapons. He could be used as a potential slot guy. You might even see him as a receiver. They do want a number 2. I think he could be used in that scenario, and I think it just only increases the amount of matchups because Sanders is a guy who you have to worry about in the receiving game. In that base package, it's going to be hard for teams to defend if Sanders is on the team.
And that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
Pause yours right there. Go over to mine. Pause right there. So on your, see, actually, Jatavion Sanders goes at 48 on my board. Looking here, I don't think the Niners should trade up from the second pick. I have a receiver. I'm just gonna let the board fall. I just don't see how I could truly look at myself. Ooh, this is an 85 and a third next year, an 80 and 97. The similar one that you just got. Looking at it, I pass on offensive tackle. Roger Rosengarten is probably the next best thing versus this kid out of Yale, Kieran. I don't know how to say his last name. Extremely high potential. Like, if he hits his ceiling, he's going to be a stud. Even if he doesn't hit his ceiling, I think he has where he's going to be a very good starter in the NFL if he gets with the right team. I already took a receiver. I don't think offensive tackle is the move right now, just because I feel like I could trade back up. So just looking at guards, who I went. Wow. All right. BB went pretty early.
Yeah, it went pretty early.
All right. So I'm looking at things. I'm like, okay, well, there isn't much for me at the offensive line. Let's look at the defensive line. Like, I truly think you could.
Brian says he wouldn't let us draft a fantasy team. Well, my guys always get. I don't know why. So maybe this is true, but
last time I checked, Ryan came in last place in his fantasy league.
Shots fired.
I'm pretty sure he came in last place.
Shots fired.
So don't be coming at me talking about fantasy teams, Ryan. Pretty sure you're in last place. So for me, like right now, I'm looking at it again, similar situation to where you're in. I don't know if the Niners should make a move up. There wasn't players where I'm like, okay, or from here, if I make a move up from the next pick is where I'd more likely see. I wouldn't see them moving up in the second round. So for here, I definitely think it's between looking at offensive tackle or Roger Rosengarten. I think he's a hell of a player. But also the player that I'm also intrigued with is Peyton Wilson. Like if he's there at 60, I don't see him being there at 63. And this is the big issue is like some of these players, I don't see them being there. So for me, I would more likely be leaning towards a guy like Roger Rosengarten here because more realistic. I don't see myself taking any corners. I don't see myself taking any of these corners this early. I'm waiting for like that round 4 pick. That's where I'm gonna start taking a corner. Edge rushers. Austin Booker is the guy I really like, but I'm not taking him at 63. I don't like how he tested. Thought he was gonna test a little bit better, but that doesn't knock me. The thing that knocks me from Austin Booker is his film is only a year. We don't have much on him. So you're really banking on the upside and the production of him. Looking here, looks like Rook went a little bit earlier. Yep, 55. That was a guy I like to target around this range. I do also like Chris Jenkins. But I'm gonna go out of the ordinary, what I wouldn't normally do in this kind of draft. I know people are gonna say it's a reach because he's ranked the 87th player in this draft.
He could very well go there here at 63.
I'm very fine with it. When I watch Roger Rosengarten, I think he's one of the better tackles after the first round. So if you do plan on taking a tackle and not go in the first round, be looking at second round, you're getting a guy with good feet, range. I love the timing of his punches. Now, every once in a while, you see his pad level go up and down. His play strength is a little iffy at times, but I feel like it's not bad enough to be like he's going to struggle with strength. I think that's going to be something that he's going to be fine with. So I'm definitely going to Roger Rosengarten. If you guys have not watched Roger Rosengarten, opposite of Fatanu, really two good players. Like when you watch the pocket for Michael Penix Jr., he had a great pocket because he had two great tackles. And I'm going to go with the upside of Roger Rosengarten. He should have went back to school. He decided he was going to enter earlier. Had a very bad college football playoffs. I'm going to go offensive tackle here, Roger, and I'm going to pause it because I might trade back up.
Now, you talk about trading back up as we go back to mine. The position that I saw talent at that I was intrigued with, even in the second round, is receiver. I saw Ricky Pearsall there. I also saw Jalen McMillan there. Those are two players who I believe are going to be pretty solid NFL players. And if you talk about replacing a guy like Deebo Samuel, I'm not saying you want the similar. You're getting a similar archetype, but you want guys who you might feel could fill a number 2 role in the NFL. Marco said how Jalen McMillan, he's a guy the Niners are pretty high on. That's a guy who I would definitely consider in the middle or early to middle third round. We'll see where they land, but my thought process here is I'm going to wait till one of these two go off the board. When they go off the board, that's when I'm going to trade up, trying to get the most value because I think both players would be good fits for the 49ers.
So you're waiting for these two players to go off the board, right?
If one player goes off the board, that's when I'm looking to pull the trigger and trade up.
All right, you got it. Well, I'll watch. Way too fast.
That's all right because they're both off the board. And now this is where we pivot a little.
So that would have been they would have had gone up to 85, which would have been hard to pause at that because I'm
84, 85 though. When you look at this, that's the range that I would probably look to take one of these players. You trade up only 10 spots. I think that that's doable given the 4th round and 5th round, picks that you might have.
Don't even worry about it. You can just take Johnny Wilson. A lot of Niner fans like him.
Me and Marco were joking. Me and Marco were joking a little bit.
I have no. This is not a joke. I text Rohan. I have the proof. I said, "Give me a player you must draft," and this is must is in capitals. He said Johnny Wilson. Don't lie. You said it.
Now that I see Johnny Wilson is at the top of the receiver list, let's pivot to another position. Let's look at the all.
If you like Johnny Wilson, reevaluate the receiver position because Johnny Wilson is bad. I'm telling you right now, he's bad. Not good. No bueno.
Yeah. All right. Now let's look at corner because I see a couple of corners that immediately stand out. And I think that corner would be a good position. DJ James, Renardo Green, and Mike Sanders-Drill. I like all three players. I think all three players are worthy of third-round selections. And I think if you look at the build of all three players.
I'm going to throw Andrew Phillips in there too because the Niners do like
him. Is he there? He's right behind him.
So,
yeah.
And they did have a top 30 visit with him. So I'm going to throw him in that range with you with all those guys you just named.
And the thing is, they're all similar archetypes, with James being, I believe, like 5'10", 170. He's a little smaller. Green's like 5'10", 185, and Sanders-Drill's like 5'10", 180 or something like that, I believe. Andrew Phillips, I believe, is also in a similar range in that he's like 5'10". He might be a little bigger, but they're all solid athletes, and they're all good at the position. So with 4 corners, that's 4, right? Yeah, 4 corners that I believe that are there. I think I'm willing to wait out 7 picks, see who falls to me out of the 4 corners, and then have my pick of the litter. All right, we see that 1 corner remains, which is why I am not going to entertain a trade offer. I don't want to lose him. And that's why Mike Sanders-Drill, who I honestly believe would be an amazing third-round selection. I don't know if he'll be here at 94. The question obviously is he's probably stuck at the nickel. But I think Mike Sanders-Drill would be an absolutely perfect pick for the Niners, especially because it would allow them to potentially move a guy like Deommodore Lenoir to the outside, where he personally probably prefers to, given the money aspect of it. And you have a corner on a rookie deal for the next 4 years that you can lock into one starting position.
So you're going,
and Mike. It's also an important position on this defense. I'm going Mike Sanders-Drill right here.
Ooh, boom. Back to mine. So I'm at pick 68. I already took a receiver. I already took an offensive tackle. I'm more so looking at offensive guard. A guy I really, really like. I think he's going to be better than a lot of people think. He's going to be a good NFL player. Is Mason McCormick.
Do you want to zoom in here so we can see the prospects?
Oh, you can't see him?
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. So Mason McCormick, I think he's a lot better than people were going to give him credit for. I do like Cedric Van Prangranger. He might be a starter day one. Bo Limmer is going to be a starter. I'm telling you right now. I know people will view him as a guy who shouldn't play because he got trampled over by Trevondre Sweat. I'm not tripping on that. So I'm probably just gonna let it slide because I already got a receiver and an offensive tackle. I'm probably just gonna let it fall to where I'm at. Pick 105 and 181. That's intriguing. 107 and 166. Those are intriguing. But I do want to take a look at what the 49ers are doing. I do know the Niners want a safety, which the reason why I say that is Kalen Bullock. He's a ball hawk. He is a guy who could be your eraser in this kind of system that the Niners run. I do like the cornerbacks that are there, a few of them. You got Mike that you just took, but there's also Spencer Rattler. I'm like, that's technically intriguing. Like the Niners truly want to develop a quarterback if that's something that they thought about. I'm not a fan of. So I'm going to go to tight end. I have Theo Johnson on the board. I think this would be a perfect spot to take Theo Johnson. So that one's there. That I'm like, I really like him. 6'6", really athletic guy, could sink his hips. Is a good enough player to pair with the 49ers. They want an offensive tackle too. Is a good enough blocker. I probably would go Theo Johnson here, but I feel like at 94, I feel like I could get him at the next pick because the Niners picked at 124. Now he might not be there, and that's just taking the gamble. But I also I don't mind taking a guy like Jared Wiley or Jaheim Bell. So I'm not too worried about if Theo Johnson's gone by my next pick.
I feel you. Yeah.
So
what do you think is the best spot then here for you at 94?
Right here at 94, I do think I need to take. I have my picks are a receiver and offensive tackle. I want to look at the defensive tackles here. I do like Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo. Those are two
LSU boys.
Two LSU boys that are really good. So right now, I'll be honest with you, it's between Mason Smith, and Mason Smith is a high upside guy. Very high upside. But I want to see, man. This one's hard because
there's a lot of talent on the board. I'll say that. A lot of talent at a lot of positions. I think honestly, I think you were about to say it. There's a guy on the board that I believe, especially when you look at the slot, you're at 94, he's at 95. I think you could take him. Johnny Wilson, he fills another need. You get two receivers in the draft. You get Adnan Mitchell, you're saying he could be a little more versatile. You get Johnny Wilson, 6'6". You could play him, as a tight end. You could play him on the outside. You got a lot of options. Go ahead.
That is crazy. That is crazy. Everyone knows I do not like Johnny Wilson at all. I don't. I don't know.
I don't know that. Are you sure about that?
Terrible. Someone should tell the NFL that he's not a good player and tell people that why he's not a good player. Here, I'm honestly, so the way I'm envisioning it, the Niners don't bring back Hufanga after next season. They need to find a rookie to develop at safety. Kalen Bullock, rangy, tackling issues, yes, but I think he could be a guy for the 49ers. I think he fits their system really well. I think he could be a starter for them next year. And this is more so me drafting for the future, not necessarily, and taking the best player on the board, in my opinion. It would be between Kalen Bullock and, if I'm being honest, probably Dominic Puny, but I'm not going to take a guard at 94, especially with a couple of guys still on the board. For example, I had McCormick on the board, and there's a lot of centers that people don't realize. Bo Limmer going to be a starter, in my opinion.
And then the Penn State guy, Hunter Norstead.
I think Hunter Norstead is going to be a starter, but I also think Taylor, your boy from Wisconsin, I think he could be a starter too. So I'm not too worried about centers or guards because I do think those guys could be a center or a guard type player. So I'm going to go Kalen Bullock. The Niners need a safety, and then I'm going to pause there, and we're going to go back to yours.
All right. So before we start here, there were a couple of positions that I was looking at.
Before we do anything, Jake Schultz, drop your Twitter handle, man. For those of you guys who don't follow Jake on Twitter, the dude is a hella good when it comes to scouting. He does it on his own. He really knows what he's talking about. Like, and a lot of times, I don't typically give people shout outs like this. I don't. My guy truly does grind the film. He's been talking about a lot of players on Twitter. So it's Jay Schultz 19, doing a really good job. Shout out to you. I don't know if you ever want to jump on and do a mock draft with me, that's fine. Like, I'm down to do something like that because you are doing the work. So shout out to you, bro. I do notice.
No, definitely. I mean, followed him on Twitter, I believe, last month or month before that. Got a lot of good draft content on there for sure. Now, looking at this one here, Drafted at 94. My next pick's at 124, but I think I have 3 picks in a very like within 10 picks. I want to move up because there are a couple of positions that I had seen that I feel could be going earlier. Let's look at safety first because one of my guys, I believe, is still on the board. And I think there are 2 of them because I didn't know Bullock was
Jaden
on the
Hicks is
board.
a stud.
And you know exactly who I was talking about because you pointed him out right before me. Jaden Hicks is the guy who I got to watch a little bit before this year started, and I think he's blossomed into a very good player. Marco kind of stole the words when he was talking about his last pick, Hufanga. I don't believe the Niners bring back Hufanga. I don't think he's not a starter this year. I think he starts this year, but I don't believe the Niners bring back Hufanga next year. Not only is he coming off the ACL, but they don't generally pay safeties top of the line money. Remember, Jimmy Ward was the main contract that they kind of dished out, and he had to take a pretty good pay cut to remain with the 49ers when he signed his 3-year deal. So Hicks is a guy who I'm definitely looking at. I like Bullock as well. I think Bullock, he's not necessarily a top end athlete, but I think he's got the instinctual capacity. So if you're looking for a guy who could replace Hufanga and the Niners need some safety depth, I think either option is good. Those are 2 guys that I'm eyeing. The other position I'm looking, the one that I missed out on at the last round, that's receiver. I think there are 2 players that I kind of eye in the 4th round. So if you look at receiver, we'll see if those 2 guys are still there. Those guys, I'm thinking of guys like Malik Washington. I'm thinking of guys like Jamari Thrash, who was more of a riser over the last few weeks. Johnny Wilson, I expect to be gone, but Malik Washington, Jamari Thrash, those are 2 guys in that 120, 125 range you're hoping could potentially fall. But for now, what I'm hoping to do is that defense will try the experiment again, where I'm looking to see when one of those 2 guys goes off the board, that's when I'm planning to trade up, meaning Kalen Bullock and Jaden Hicks. I'd have Hicks slightly over just because of the role that I envision him playing on the Niners. And so that's kind of my goal. When one of those 2 guys kind of goes off the board, that's when I probably hope to trade up. So let's see if we can hopefully not have him go back to back.
So you're going with Jaden Hicks, you said?
Hicks or Bullock. Those I'm preferring Hicks. We'll see though which one goes off the board first. After that, want to execute a trade up.
So who are you gonna take? Oh, so okay. So you're gonna okay. I'll keep it on here, so I'll try to pause.
All right, there we go. We're at 107 with the Giants. This is where I'm going to look to trade up here for Jaden Hicks before he goes. So yeah, we'll try our first trade of the video, I guess.
So you're gonna trade with the New York Giants. Confirm. You're giving one
And low
pick.
key, this might be realistic. They don't got picks, so might be a little more realistic, you know.
You can tell me what you're giving up because I'm not gonna. I don't trade.
So I'm looking to potentially give up. I'm gonna keep 124. Hopefully, a receiver that I like falls there. I'm looking to give up maybe 132 and 135. I think that those 2 sound realistic. We'll see if we can get that to go, and it does. So you trade 2 of your 4s, you move up 25 spots, and we're taking Jaden Hicks here.
And what's crazy is Jaden Hicks and Kalen, they're very similar safeties. They're 6'2", rangy. They're at IQ, so 2 very similar players. The only difference is Jaden Hicks has questionable
I think
speed, I would say, but it's not really questionable. Like it's just more so. I don't know. When you watch him, he has the speed. I would say it's more so translating that speed to the next level
into coverage. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's the speed's there when he's running in a straight line and breaking on routes and stuff. It's more so in his man-to-man coverage. That's where his speed, he gets too caught up. And I think that's, for me, one of the ones where I do prefer Kalen Bullock over Jaden Hicks, but it's a tad bit. I go back and forth with those 2 every day. It's really, those 2 guys are really good safeties. Oh, dang, I didn't even see my guy Jason in the house. Hey, Talofa, he's saying what's up to you. I don't know if you know what he's pretty much saying hi.
I don't, but what's up, my man? Appreciate it.
So you took Jaden Hicks. He goes at 100. So you ended up having to trade up to go get him here. So now back to mine. I could actually do things right. And I'm picking at 124. I'm probably just going to let it roll. I really don't. Ah, dang.
And you see Mason Smith right there at 110?
No, I see My guy Cam Hart going here at 107. My
Okay.
heart
Corner.
break.
Yeah.
It's a really good corner if you guys aren't interested in him. But you know what? Now that I'm here, I pause it on time. I'm going to go over to defense. I do see Mason Smith there at 108, but I also see Mekhi Wingo at 115. So I'm not too worried about defensive tackle because there's two guys there. I also do like Tyler Davis out of Clemson. Not bad. So I'm looking at things, and I want to see cornerback. Kyrie Jackson is there at 124. Kalen King, I'm saying 100%. Like, give me a freaking 100-yard stick so I could stick it out so I can stay away from him. But I'm probably just gonna let it trade because I wanted Cam Hart, but he's not gonna be there. So I'm just hoping my guy Kyrie Jackson falls to 124, which he's not. He just went. Not shocked. Not shocked.
And I think I see Mekhi Wingo who went.
And likely my other guy went too.
No,
Didn't.
I don't see his name.
McCormick went, which McCormick's a really good player. So now I'm looking at defensive tackle, and I really like Mason Smith. Now it's weird because I think Mekhi Wingo is the better player of the two. But when you look at Mason Smith, he has the higher upside of the two. 6'5", 305 pounds, 35-inch arms, a great initial first step. Lateral agility is great. He's versatile. He could kick inside, kick outside on base downs. He can set the edge. Now he has injury history, hasn't played much, sometimes plays with high pad level, and he needs to develop a pass rushing repertoire. And like essentially what you're looking at him as is a developmental guy. And in the fourth round, I'm taking those kind of guys with the high level athletes, which I believe his raw score is probably in the nines. I'm gonna take a look at it. I know they have the raw score, and I don't really look at it to think 8.38, which I kind of assumed was around 9. So he's the top guy on my list. I know the Niners need a defensive tackle, even though they signed a lot of them or traded for them. But I also want to see tight end. I picked next at 132. I feel okay letting it fall because I'm comfortable with these 3 tight ends. So I feel fine letting it fall. And I'm gonna go Mason Smith here at pick 124. And then we'll bounce right back to yours.
So, as I said when I last picked, the hope was trading up for safety because I like Jaden Hicks, and then looking potentially at receiver here at 124. So I want to see which receivers are still on the board here. There were 2 guys that I wanted. One was Malik Washington. The other was, I believe, Jamari Thrash. Thrash is the guy I personally prefer for the Niners. I think he is a guy who works well after the catch. I know he's on the older side, turns 24, I believe, this December.
He just went.
But he goes 109. And so me personally, I'm thinking, do I want to wait 10 spots to potentially take Washington, who's smaller, who's 5'8", but I think he works well after the catch. I think he could be a good fit for the slot. The other guy who I'm kind of looking at, who the Niners have been linked to, is Javon Baker, a guy who was extremely efficient with his opportunities. I believe he ran over 3 yards per route run. That's something that, if you look at compared to the Niners this year, not saying player comparison, but that's something, if you're talking about efficiency, there were a couple of players only in the NFL that ran that high. Brandon Aiyuk was one of them. And so Javon Baker, he's a guy who's like 6'1", 205 pounds. He'd be a little bigger. But at the moment, I'm going to pause on receiver here. We're going to see what else is on the board. Let's look defensively. Let's see what could remain. There are positions like defensive tackle. I know you like them too. Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, both are there. I think that those 2 would both be solid fits. I like those 2 overall at defensive tackle. You see McKinley Jackson still there. I think the talent is good, and I'm going to let this ride out to 124. And so we're here at 124. I saw McKinley Jackson just go and Mekhi Wingo just go. Mason Smith is there. And I haven't taken a single defensive lineman in this class. I think you also took him at 124, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
I did.
Yeah. And so Mason Smith is solid. I do want to check one position before I.
Okay,
yeah. 124. I want to check receiver again, and I want to check the interior offensive line because those are the players that usually kind of stand out to me. Malik Washington is also here. I want to see center and guard, though, because Tanner Bortolini is here. You see Bo Limmer, Hunter Norzad, and because I traded away those extra picks earlier, I
They're
don't
not
have
going to
that
be.
130, 132, 135. Those guys will not be there at 176. And so I think there are a lot of options here. I could go receiver, which I haven't gone at all in this draft. I could go at often. I could go with the center, who I think is going to be vital for the 49ers, especially since I didn't take Graham Barton earlier. Or I could go defensive tackle and take Bassan Smith. Now, if I'm thinking in the Niners sense, you know that they'd probably prefer a defensive tackle. But me personally, I think it's important to prioritize receiver and allow for that year of development. The two guys that stand out, well, the other guy that stood out for me was Javon Baker. He is not on the board. And so I think I'm going to actually take Malik Washington, despite his size. I'm going to take him here. Javon Baker went at 114. I think I'm
That's
going to
actually a
take
good
Malik
spot.
Washington here to the
That good,
Chargers.
yeah, that's a good spot for him.
So, yeah, I think Malik Washington is my guy. I'm going to pass on some stronger defensive tackles. I'm going to pass on the center prospects, and we're going to go with the receiver.
So mine's pretty much already back to 132. So I'll let it fall. Boom. And then I'm picking at 135. So I'll just go right. I'll go back to back just so it doesn't go too crazy. So for me, I do like tight end. Theo Johnson's still there. And I probably won't. I don't see Theo Johnson being there between these two. Not going to lie. I don't trust the Jets taking him. I think the Jets would probably take him depending on who they've taken. Offensive tackle, receiver. I can see them going tight end. They don't have a tight end over there. But I do also like Bo Limmer. I could see Bo being there at 135. I truly can. So it's for me looking at it. Javon Baker's also there. Defensively, is there any corners? I don't see any corners on the board yet that I would trade. I would probably come back and trade up after pick 135 if I could, to around 145 for Smith Wade from Washington State. But even then, that's kind of pushing it for me. I'd rather just let Jarvis Brownlee, who a lot of you know, if you're in tune with the Senior Bowl, he was a Senior Bowl standout. Really good, really good Senior Bowl standout. A guy that I started liking a lot, and I text Rohan during the combine. Had not watched him at all. Tarheeb Steele, went to go watch him. Like, this dude could play. He could be a solid 5th, 6th rounder. So for me, I do like those two dudes later in the draft over taking Smith Wade at 135. So at pick 132, I know the Niners want to get a tight end too. So I'm going to go Theo Johnson. Theo Johnson again. We're talking about 6'6" tight end. We're looking at a guy who truly is going to be one of those guys who, if the Niners decide to try to replace George Kittle within the next few years, he'd be the guy. Good hands, good yards after the catch, route runner. His initial burst is good. Now his only issue is he doesn't have any twitchiness to him. It's more just athleticism and speed. There's no like natural twitch. I'm gonna go with Theo Johnson here at pick 132. And then boom, pick 135. I'm gonna go ahead and go over to center. I think the Niners need to get a center. I think Bo Limmer could be a guy who could play guard as well. When you watch Bo Limmer, it's funny. The poor dude gets killed for that one rep at the Senior Bowl. I believe Bo Limmer came in at 6'5", 6'4", 300 pounds, 32-inch arms at the combine. Very high IQ, very athletic. Could get to that outside zone. I watched an interview on him, and he said he prefers outside zone over gap scheme, which bingo, Niners run that style of offense, that zone style. He has a good anchor against the bull rush, even though he didn't show against Sweat. It's also going open against a guy that's 367 pounds or so. I think Bo Limmer would be the perfect guy for Kyle's offense to be the future center, coming from the SEC over to the NFC West to be the Niners starting center. Now back to you, Rohan.
Two good picks. As I said earlier, probably looking to just stick this through. You got 40 picks. You got a couple. If you wanted to trade up, you could. But I think that, right now, looking to stick things through, you see a couple centers go right there. So that was a position I was looking at. But I believe Norzad and Limmer went back to back. Could you trade up potentially? I think you could see a trade up there. But we'll look at positions maybe I haven't targeted as much. I like Eric All. I do, but I did take a tight end. I like Christian Boyd. He's a defensive tackle that you could consider. But also, well, a guy who I would honestly take in the situation that I'm not going to because I don't believe he'll be here is Isaac Garendo, a guy who I had the pleasure of covering last year or 2 years ago at Wisconsin. He was a guy who I honestly, within my first 2 weeks, he was a guy who I thought was going to be a sleeper on that team, a guy who I could very well see going in within the first 4 rounds of the draft after a really good showing at the combine. But I've taken safety, taken receiver, I've taken a lot of positions that I was looking to take with good players at those positions. I think I want to see who's at the defensive line now. So you see Christian Boyd here. I think he's the guy who I would, if I was taking a defensive tackle, the guy who I'd probably take, a guy who the Niners have been linked to, solid frame, 6'2", 330, probably a little bigger than some of the defensive tackles that they've taken in the past, but he's a guy who I think you could consider. And then at edge, I want to see if a guy who I usually look at in this position, well, Mo Kamara, I don't think will be here at a Colorado State at 176, probably goes a little higher. Brennan Jackson, though, on the other hand, he's a guy out of Washington State. I know I took a Washington State guy with Jaden Hicks, but he's a guy who I think I could consider in the 5th, 6th round type of range, a guy who I think is a good athlete and needs refinement as a pass rusher. I think he's a guy who has good traits, and I think he's a guy who, if the Niners look at it, is a guy who they could definitely consider as a potential guy to kind of come in the room. Solid frame. He's around 6'3", solid length, good RAS from the combine. I think he's a guy who I would consider here, and a guy who I might honestly end up taking. I do want to see the offensive linemen here, interior guys, potentially seeing if there is a guy who might have fallen. You look at the guards here, and then we can take a look at the centers as well. I don't know if there's a guy who I would take at 176 at the moment over maybe a guy like Brennan Jackson. So the way that I look at it, I think Brennan Jackson is going to ultimately be my guy here at 176. We make our first pick along the defensive line, and there it is.
So now I'm picking at 176, and this is a spot where Jarvis Brownlee already just went. And if I want to go corner, looking at the defensive side, Shaw Smith-Wade is there. So for me, looking at guys like the corners, right? Shaw Smith-Wade, Elijah Jones out of Boston College. So essentially kind of just trying to find a player who truly could essentially start day one. I didn't take a nickel corner right away like you did. So it kind of puts the 49ers secondary, allowing why can I not think of his name? The kid they just signed.
You're talking about Isaac Yiadom?
Yeah, Isaac Yiadom. Eventually, Isaac Yiadom would be the outside corner. Phenomenal Lenore would have to move in. But I do think Shaw Smith-Wade could be a nickel corner. It's very tough, good run support, inside, outside versatility. But I'm actually just going to let it play out. Like, I truly, at this point, it's like this point of the draft, there's nothing crazy where it's like, I must have this player. No edge rushers that I'm like, we must get. No linebackers. I already have a safety, receiver, maybe Javon Baker if I want to double up on receiver. But again, also like Cornelius Johnson, which very similar style of play where I could, if you're valuing
probably could get him a little later. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of those ones where you could kind of bounce around. So I'm just gonna let it fall. Like I'm not gonna mess around. And whoever falls to me, I'm gonna go best player available and we'll go from there. So looking at it, I do like Gabe Hall. Had a really good Senior Bowl. Elijah Jones out of Boston College. I think I want to say the Niners have met with him. I could be wrong.
I believe so. Yeah.
Let me double check on that. Because I do have a list where I have guys who've met with the Niners. He has 6'1".
Yeah.
Length, ball skills. He's good instincts. Again, a guy, if we're looking for a guy who could play outside, doesn't kind of struggle with like the short area quickness. So he's gonna have to get better at that. His speed isn't great, but I don't think you gotta have great speed to play as a corner on the Niners defense, especially when a great defensive line. I'm gonna go Elijah Jones here because I know we need a corner. Best player available here, in my opinion. Christian Jones, obviously, if I hadn't gone,
that's a guy who I actually really like. Yeah,
really good. We also have guys like Dallin Holker. But to be honest, I think where's my guy? I'm gonna go Elijah Jones, and then I'm just gonna let it play out. I don't see myself moving up. Do you want to move up from 211 to anywhere up?
I don't think so. I think it's best player available. These last three picks I kind of view as shots in the dark. You're looking at players who you believe could potentially make your roster, could potentially improve you at a certain area. But yeah, more so shots in the dark at this stage of the draft, especially because I don't believe this draft is as deep as some other drafts, in the
It's not.
past. And so that might be an area where you
What's,
might not potentially want to spend as much capital, or you
what's
could see it
crazy
in the sense you move off of those picks earlier.
and what's crazy about the pick I just took, Elijah Jones, is I know like a lot of the time like on film it shows like he looks like he's slower, but then at the combine he
Mhm.
literally lit it up. Like that's one thing I was like kind of shocked on. I was like, wait, looking at some of the notes I have, I'm like slower speed, slower play speed, and then at the combine 4.4 jumps out of the freaking building, jumped to 42.5 vertical, 10-11 broad, like some crazy numbers. So it's like, hey, the athleticism's there. Athleticism, I mean, that's what you're banking on this part of the draft.
I agree. I agree. And so here, like I said, it's a couple more shots in the dark. I pick here from 211 and then I pick again at 215. I'm initially probably going to look once again at center. I want to see if there's a guy who you might consider. And the guy who I look at is Florida center Kingsley Iguakan. I think he's got solid athleticism. That's something that the 49ers might look to mold. Tested pretty well. He's on the smaller side, but I think he tested pretty well. He's a guy who I could consider at either spot. The other guy I want to look at, let's go to receiver real quick. I know I took Malik Washington, but I want to try and have a little bit more of a divisive profile. And the guy I look at is Pittsburgh's Bub Means. I think he could be a strong candidate to go in this range. He's around 6'1", 6'2", in the 200, 212-pound range, but he tested very well at the combine. A guy who I kind of, before the combine even started, that's a guy who I kind of looked at as a potential player who I think the 49ers could play well. More importantly, the Niners need a returner. Means is a guy who could play special teams. He's a guy who could fit that mold pretty well. I think the Niners could very well value him. Another position I'd look at, although it might be with my very last pick, would be linebacker. I like a guy like Jordan McGee at Temple. He's a guy who I usually kind of consider in the later rounds. And so considering where we are on the board, that might be a guy who I might even consider in the first pick. So let's look at linebacker real quick. Jordan McGee, he's a guy who I really like. I think he's a guy with good speed, with what the Niners kind of consider at linebacker overall. And so I think he might be a guy who you consider as well within this range. You see him there, I believe, at 270. And so in terms of order of picks, I think I could be able to get all three guys. I'll go with McGee here at 211, and then I could quickly go at 215. Likely I'll take Bub Means, the receiver, at 215.
You on Bubba Means. Cool. And then we'll just let it play out, and then you can pick out 251.
Yeah, and if my guy is there, who I'm talking about, center Kingsley Aguakan, that's going to be my guy. He's right there on the board. Perfect timing. I'm going to take him here at 251 to close out my draft.
So just to take a look at Rohan's draft before I finish out my draft, I'm gonna go ahead and download this so I have it and I can send it over. So he went OT, tight end, cornerback, Jaden Hicks, Malik Washington, Brennan Jackson, Jordan McGee, Bub Means, and ended out with a center. Good draft right there, actually. You're literally replacing 3 starters immediately, in my opinion. Potentially a fourth if a safety goes down. A guy who has great special teams value, especially with the new kickoff rule. I think Malik
Yeah,
Washington is a great returner in that spot, and I think he's also a better receiver than he gets credit for. So at 211, let me confirm what I just did. I took cornerback Elijah Jones. I've already taken a center. I've already taken everything. Don't really need anything. Like I truly don't think the Niners have any needs at this point. I've taken a offensive tackle, safety, tight end, center, corner, a receiver. Went out and got a receiver. Now, for me, it's more so about players you think could become guys. Like when you're watching film with dudes who you think could be a guy. At edge, I do like Eric Watts, but I think he's more of a defensive tackle in the NFL. I don't see him being an edge rusher in the NFL. At least getting after the quarterback from the edge. At linebacker, I do like Jordan McGee, which one of the guys you took. I was looking for the guy out of Washington. I cannot think of his name.
Talking about Brennan Jackson?
Nope.
The linebacker. Oh, yeah.
So I'm gonna go offensive guard. I've heard good things about Dylan McMahon, but I have not watched him, so I'm not gonna take a guy I have not watched. This is the point where you're in the draft. You have guys. I've taken a receiver already, so in my opinion, I think the Niners have 4 legitimately locked receivers. They got Brandon Aiyuk, Deebo, Jawan Jennings, Adonai Mitchell, and they're going to need another receiver. Jawan Jennings is going to be gone. A guy I really, really like, Cornelius Johnson. If you watch Nico Collins with the Houston Texans, reminds me extremely of him. Then I'm back on the board at 215. I want to go defensive tackle here. And at defensive tackle, he's already gone. Where'd he go? There he is. Out of James Madison, small school kid, Jamari Croma. I think he's going to be a very good rotational guy in the NFL. So that changes my plans. And Eric Watt's still here, so I'm going to go Eric Watt. I think he's a guy who could be that big edge. He could move into the defensive tackle spot. A guy who had a good Senior Bowl. When at this point in the draft, when you're looking at guys, it's how do they do against better competition? 6'6", 275, probably could add on an extra 10 pounds to move inside. Good play strength, versatility. Doesn't have great pass rushing moves, so that's why I think he's gonna move inside as that pass rusher. And when you look at him, and this is how when I'm drafting how I'm thinking. What's the Niners player who was with the Charles Omenihu, who wants revenge on the Niners all of a sudden? It's like, it doesn't make sense. You won a Super Bowl. But that's how I see the Niners using him. And then to end out my draft, I'm going to go quarterback. You can never – Kyle Shanahan always loves to have 4 quarterbacks in camp. It takes care of your arms. Now, Carter Bradley, high IQ. Devin Leary, probably the bigger arm of the two. Devin Leary isn't like anything crazy out of Kentucky. Solid arm, 6'1", but a very inaccurate quarterback. Does not have touch on the ball. To be honest, this is the guy I'm always going to mock in the last
Slovis?
Probably. Kedon Slovis. High upside as a quarterback, as a freshman. So looking at your draft versus mine, you took OT. I went receiver, and then I took a tackle, and then you took tight end and a corner. I ended up going safety D tackle. You traded up to 107, so you have one less pick. You traded picks 132 and 135, which if you're a 49ers fans, they're probably going to get mad that you gave up pick 135, which is a 49ers pick that everyone's going to be like, oh my God, Luke McCaffrey. So when you tweet this out, make sure you let everyone know you didn't pick Luke McCaffrey, and instead you traded him to the Giants for Jaden Hicks, because 49er fans.
I had the chance to pick him at 124. I elected not to, but oh well.
Caden Wallace, he's the corner from, I believe he's a corner. Correct me if I'm wrong. From Wake Forest, right? Or I could be 100% wrong. And then John Q says, as a Pitt fan, Slovis was terrible when he played for us. Slovis was great at USC, got injured, went to 2 different schools with bad systems and bad offenses, and that's the product of it. And he doesn't mean he's a good quarterback, but that's just how it rolls out. I ended up taking Elijah Jones at pick 176. I got a future starting center, just like Rohan did. Rohan got his starting center later in the draft, with the last pick in the draft for the Niners. You also got a developmental edge guy and a linebacker who could essentially take a spot from one of the rookies that the Niners just had, right? Honestly, 2 very similar drafts in a way. If you look at them, we both got tight ends, both got corners, receivers, offensive tackles. If you had a grade our draft classes, comment below. Oh, let me. Who would you prefer draft?
I think
Because
yours sucks compared to mine. Yours, it just sucks. Like, I don't know what you were thinking. Cool that some of the players may have, overlapped and stuff. I don't know what you were thinking.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Like, I would never have taken Jatavion Sanders at pick 63 because he's a first-round tight end, in my opinion. So the fact that you got a first-round tight end at pick 63, that's a steal. I wouldn't have taken Brandon Jackson at pick 176 because, and this is just like when I was looking at it, it's like not even like talking shit, just like looking who was there. Christian Boyd. I would have went Christian Boyd, and then you ended up doubling up and getting, but I think you had gotten the defensive tackle right before that because you were talking about Christian Boyd. No, you didn't get a defensive tackle.
No, I chose Jackson over Boyd.
That's I would have gone Boyd over Jackson.
I gotta feed Chris with them edge rushers, man. I gotta feed Chris with the edge rushers. Kosarek gotta feed him. That's just the way we gotta do it.
That's the only pick where I was like, ooh, I would have taken the other guy over him. Only pick I thought you were gonna go Boyd at first. I was like, oh shit, hell yeah, he's going Boyd.
If I look at your draft, I think the one thing that I would have changed, at 94, I know you wanted a safety. I know you like USC because you want to replace Hufanga with a guy from his school. Would have probably picked Johnny Walker, as I told you during the draft, because he was the 95th. Or he went at 96. Oh shoot. Oh man, I was thinking UFC. I was thinking UFC.
This is how you know we both don't like Johnny Wilson. He's over here calling Johnny Wilson Johnny Walker when he's talking about.
I mean, Johnny Walker got that knockout power from the UFC, but like I would have taken Wilson probably there at 94, but that's the only difference.
That's hilarious. That is hilarious. Well, like I said, make sure you guys subscribe to both channels. Make sure you guys give us both a grade. Make sure you guys let us know what you think of our drafts, how bad they were, how great they were. Make sure you guys comment, hit that like and subscribe button on Rohan Chakravarthi's channel, Clutch Gene Sports channel. Thank you guys for tuning in. Rohan, great draft. Anything else you want to touch on before we head out?
No, this was a fun one. My first one on, live on camera. Definitely excited though for the remainder of draft season before the, we got 3-4 more weeks before the real draft starts. So excited to continue these, and we'll see where we go. As the buzz continues to heighten as the draft comes along.
Thank you, Oos. Appreciate it. But I definitely make sure you guys are subscribed to both channels. Me and Rohan have been talking about potentially watching film on a couple of guys. If you guys do have anyone you absolutely want to watch film on and you want us to put it on the screen and watch film with you guys, make sure you guys drop their names in the chat, DM Rohan or myself, and we can probably get something like that going. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe and like button. We're out.